So, welcome everyone once again to the Road to Success online free masterclass program. This is our third masterclass in the last 3 months, and we've had some very good interaction, very good participation for the last two masterclasses, and I'm sure this one is going to be a big success as well. At Freedom One International, basically we do executive coaching, we do training for clients, but we also do public events, our books, our movies, and our free masterclass provides a lot of valuable content to people because one of our main goals is to impact 50,000 people in 5 years. So we find any avenue and any way where we could, contribute to our society. So today we have a very, very special guest, Benjamin Quinlan. I got to know Benjamin about 2 years back when we were sharing the same office space at IFC, and we sat in close proximity. And since then, I've seen, he has a very interesting career background. He's been doing some amazing, great work, and I thought it would be very useful, especially in these times where, there's a lot of uncertainty going on, to have someone of Benjamin's caliber on our talk show. And I'm sure you really enjoy and get a lot of information from Benjamin. So let's introduce our guest. Benjamin Quinlan is the CEO and managing partner of Quinlan Associates. He is the chairman of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong, an adjunct professor at the AIT School of Management, a mentor for Ping An's Cloud Accelerator, and a guest contributor for Financial Careers and Regulation Asia. He was named as one of Lattice 80's top 50 fintech influencers in Hong Kong in 2018. Now, Benjamin has an extensive track record advising many of the world's leading multinational companies, financial services organizations on a variety of high-profile strategic engagements. He has been quoted extensively in the global financial press and is frequently interviewed by leading media outlets, including Bloomberg, CNBC, Reuters, Channel News Asia. So I'm sure you've seen him very often on LinkedIn as well. So prior to founding Quinlan Associates, Benjamin was the head of strategy for Deutsche Bank equities business in Asia Pacific and its investment bank in Greater China. Now, outside his corporate career, Benjamin has a lighter side as well. He's a professional stand-up comedian with headlines at major comedy clubs across Asia. He was the winner of the 2017 Hong Kong International Comedy Competition, and he sold out his past 10 comedy shows with over 1,000 tickets sold. So that's pretty good. So with this, I would like to give a warm welcome to Benjamin. Ben, very, very happy to have you on our call.
Thank you, Danny. Yes, I'm very pleased to be here. Top 50 fintech influencers. There's only 20 in Hong Kong, so it was easy to make that cut. But overall, I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion, and obviously lots of things to share given what's going on in the world these days.
Absolutely. So the way we'll go with this is, I'll ask you a couple of questions. It's free flow, so we could just have a conversation style. If anybody has a question for Benjamin, then you can just type it in the chat box, and I can address it with him at the right time. So let's get cracking. So I think, you clearly have a very distinguished career, and that's awesome. But I think what I would like to start with is in your new position, and congratulations for that as a chairman of FinTech Association of Hong Kong.
Thank you.
What is the main priority for you in this role? And what's the opportunity here for people listening to you or for the community at large? If you could just give us some brief on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a bit of context. FinTech Association is actually the fintech industry representative body in Hong Kong. There's about 1,700 members representing from corporates down to startups and individuals. It's been running since about 2017, so it's not new. And the previous chairman was Henry Aslanian, but we have 2-year chairmanship terms. I think we all believe in the fact that new chairmanship and new leadership is always a good thing, right? To reinvigorate the ecosystem. So I guess stepping into this role, it's really about optimizing the association as a whole. I think overall, any new organization that grows goes through its successes, and I think it's done some amazing things in the past few years. But also, as we institutionalize what we're trying to do, it's making us more efficient and better run as an organization. That's really the internal part. But the external part is the value delivery to our members. At the end of the day, we're here as an association to drive value for our 1,700 members around what they really need and want. And at our core purpose as an association, we're really there to advocate on behalf of all of the constituents to the relevant government authorities, to the relevant media, anything to really get the message out there on their behalf. I think the other side is beyond that, it's what are we doing as an association to drive education and collaboration? How do we get people, networked? How do we get people understanding the latest trends and developments? So all the ideas that we're putting into this new FTAHK 2.0 strategy center around, at its core, value delivery for members across those dimensions.
That's fantastic. Very good. Very good. I would also like to touch upon, given the situation we have in Hong Kong recently with COVID, I have a lot of people from the financial services industry feeling very nervous about their short-term careers, how this is going to pan out, etc. So from a fintech perspective and from your perspective personally as well, what opportunities does fintech provide in terms of attracting talent from financial services? Because I think based on from what I see, fintech is a very growing industry, especially in Hong Kong. I've seen that, some very good people, very smart people getting into the industry. And I personally like the business model as well. So how do you, see attracting talent from various parts of financial services, especially in these times?
Well, look, fintech I did this interesting session yesterday. The topic of it was is fintech overhyped? And it was really to generate that ongoing discussion. And my view, it depends how you look at it, right? I don't think under any circumstances fintech is overhyped. I think there are a lot of players that have come out in the past few years, so it's very saturated, but the opportunity is there. COVID has really catalyzed a change in everyone's behavior, and digital, which was once like a really nice to have strategic priority and a way that companies could differentiate themselves, is an operational necessity now. If you're not digitally enabled, then I'm sorry, you're going to get left behind pretty fast, because the lockdowns, the way that we work, the way that we pay for things, interact, shop, it's all changed, right? And to the extent that they can free up, supermarkets, let us roam around, go shopping, go to malls, then, that might go back to normal. But I think everyone talks about this new normal. I talk about it as a relatively new abnormal, right? I don't consider being on my couch in my home for that long very normal. But what does that mean for careers? I mean, there's a lot of discussions around, will fintech replace a lot of jobs? Will a lot of people be unemployed as a result of this? And there's two parts to this answer. One part is yes. All right. So I have to address the yes. There's a lot of jobs in financial services that I would call low value add and process oriented in nature. So especially a lot of middle and back office functions that revolve around documentation and repetitive tasks that ultimately could be automated by a computer. However, while those low value add tasks disappear, the skill sets and the jobs that will come about as a result of it will obviously be in huge demand. So this is around transformation. This is around thinking and designing these systems. This is around the customer service layer to support them. There's a whole element around the actual transformation process and this critical thinking skills that are needed to make this technology work. And the one area I constantly remind people is, don't overestimate just how much tech will replace certain parts of our lives as human beings. Because at the end of the day, we're very social creatures, right? Even the introverts are craving a bit of human contact. And I always joke, whenever I have an issue with HSBC at the bank, I want to phone up the bank and yell at someone, right? I don't want to type my complaint in a chatbot that automates a response for me. If I get advice around where I park my money, I want to be able to look someone in the eye and say, I'm going to come and get you if my money goes down the toilet, right? There are elements to this, the human touch of business as a whole. I always say the 5 most important things in business are people, 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 and people, right? So you're never going to fundamentally detract from that. But I think the evolving nature of the jobs market will become more dynamic. The skill sets will change. And what people ultimately need to bring into the workforce and think about retooling themselves will need to come front and center, because people are starting to realize certain skill sets that can be automated, upskill that skill set and really compete on the next dimension of your career, which is around the value add and how you engage with and interact with these tools and technology and drive that change.
That's true. That's true. So, are you seeing an uptick in professionals wanting to, join the fintech industry? Are you seeing that momentum building?
So there's a couple of dynamics to this, actually. If you look at the banking industry, it's no surprise that it's lost its shine, right? It used to be the golden passport of choice, right, into your dream career. And, I wrote a report, my company wrote a report on this in 2017 called Don't Bank on It. And it was looking at banking's talent crisis. And you were seeing a huge outflow, even at the university level, of people away from finance related jobs into the technology companies. Part of it, what was the reasons you joined a bank? For the reputation. It used to be sexy to have a Deutsche Bank business card. I might beg to differ right now. And it also used to pay very well, right? It used to pay leaps and bounds above the competition. But I think the sacrifices involved associated with that job and the way that people actually engaged in their daily tasks at their desk, there was a lot of self-reflection. And what you saw even before this COVID situation is many people in the banking industry were actually packing up and leaving to go and do yoga in Bali for 6 months, right? That's an actual thing. Analysts were quitting a year and a half into their 3-year analyst program going, I don't want to do this. I want to launch my own app. You would have never, ever seen this stuff 15, 20 years ago. It wouldn't happen. You had to stick out your rite of passage, right? And see it through. So
Why do
attitude.
you think that it is? Why do you think so many people are waking up to different avenues? Is it?
I think there's several dynamics. So it's like, one is really around the revitalization of or the opening of the gig economy, right? These platforms have allowed people to effectively monetize themselves, right? To develop their own brand and own identity. If you're great at personal branding, you can go online and build your own profile on a LinkedIn, on an Instagram, on something where you can drive your own business. So the flexibility around the economy and the way that people make money and interact with each other has allowed for that. And I think just generally the attitudes have changed. The millennial generation are not looking for exactly the same thing, and slogging it out for 40 years behind a desk at a bank. It's not really the aspiration of choice. So, opening up to different ideas and what they can do with their skill sets and change the world, as many of them want to, that's great. I think the other dynamic is because of that, there is an inevitable pressure with young people that basically click online and see all their friends are founders of something, right? I started to realize everyone's a CEO, right? So every title that might be assigned to me is the same as an 18-year-old kid that I might meet, down the road. But there is a kind of pressure and a psychological aspect to it as well, around people feeling like they have the opportunity now to go out and do this kind of stuff where they didn't have that opportunity before. So a couple of forces at play, but overall, I see, to go back, and sorry to make this long-winded, but your original question was, are people moving to fintech? I think more established fintechs that have a commercial proposition that are doing very well have been able to signal to other people in the market that this is the future, right? So it naturally has an attraction about it that a brick and mortar traditional bank would not. I think there is that feel about a startup and doing something a bit more innovative and entrepreneurial, albeit inside a corporate construct. However, I do realize that quite a lot of people that move to fintechs end up rolling their eyes to the back of their heads for a completely different reason. And that is the complete lack of corporate structure. And that happens to a lot of people that say, I'm not used to this. Where are the processes in place? How do I get paid? How are my KPIs determined? There's so much of a black box that naturally a lot of these companies haven't developed because they're in that process of their life cycle. So there is a trade-off, right? Many people are multi-hatting at these companies. My job is X. Oh, it's X plus Y plus Z actually. Whereas in a bank, my job was like a slither of X.
Yes.
It's so specialized. So it really depends on the individual and how they, I guess, choose to approach their career and what they want out of it. But fintechs can offer very big pluses and also very big downsides, as well as, you know, established financial institutions. It's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. Are the regulators supporting you guys very well?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think overall the environment is conducive towards moving towards tech adoption. And I think the sandboxes, the regulatory sandboxes to allow people to trial things says you can do this without actually bearing any, you know, negative consequences. We're very open to exploring new technology. So
Yeah.
that's been supportive. But the regulatory tone has also changed. If you look at even the example in Australia, Australian Securities Investments Commission, they've now adopted this policy called if not, why not with RegTech, right? So if you're not using the best and latest and greatest solutions, why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
So the onus is now on you to explain why you're not adopting technology when it's there, and why you're not becoming more efficient and I guess potentially minimizing human error and risk in the process. But
Yeah.
tech also comes with its own risks. There's no perfect solution.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So as an MC, you're right now chairman for the FinTech Association. In your own role as the founder of Quinlan Associates, what exactly do you do in terms of your strategic initiatives, and how do you serve clients? What problems are you solving for them right
In a nutshell, the best way to describe what we do is, I always joke like we're a mini McKinsey, Bain, BCG, but I don't want to associate with these companies. We compete directly with them. Like I'm not going to go beat around the bush. We compete directly with these guys on projects. But what are we? We solve problems for clients. It's going to be as open-ended as that. Any corporate problem that a client has, whether
now?
it's digital transformation, whether it's an HR setup, whether it's their risk policies and protocols, whether it's launching a new product, whether it's entering a new market, a good consultant is there to sit down and understand what a client wants to achieve, what its pain points and problems are. And the reason why we don't hypothesize about things, which I hate with the other consulting firms, is I don't run to you with an upfront conclusion saying, I think this is going to happen. Pay me to prove this random conjecture. It's really, well, what is your problem? And then we go and do a diagnostics, just like a doctor would. You know, a doctor doesn't diagnose you before running his lab or his or her lab tests and doing x-rays and getting your blood work.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's targeted because you need to understand what the symptoms are. But as soon as you understand what the client's symptoms are, and you understand what kind of things are going wrong with the business, you can take a step back and run diagnostics. And you do it with data. You don't do it with just randomness. You really focus it on data and insights. And when you get that data, that proves the point. And that's what our clients find. When we give them recommendations, all the recommendations are given on the last day, not the third day of a project, right? Whereas if I worked in a big consultancy, I would give it up front. This is what I think you should do. There are ingoing views, but I really can only confirm everything once I've done all my homework.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, because when we deliver our advice, there's no cross-eye going, where did you come up with that? It's all, yeah, you've really proven your point and you've backed it up. So I fully agree with where you've come to this conclusion. So that's the consulting methodology we approach. And that's generally why I set up my business.
That's good. That's good. So, at this point in time, what are the main issues that, corporates are coming up with? Is it mainly digital transformation, or is it like
Everything.
strategy, or is it just like the range of issues that they?
I would say digital is the underlying connector theme, but there's so many different issues. Like we don't ever really market the stuff we do outside of financial services, but we do quite a lot. Like we work in the education space, in retail and consumer products, health and fitness. It's really quite broad. We just haven't gone to the market and said we've done this. A lot of this is the inbound inquiries of people that have heard what we do. But their problems are very different, and each and every business has a different problem. And I guess that's the nature of how we go about doing things. It's bespoke. I can't lift the solution and be like, oh, this is exactly what we did with one client. It's going to work with you. because you have a digital problem. It's completely different. And the one, I guess, if you work with a consultant, if anyone on this session has worked with a consultant before, they generally frame a view. It's like one of the things that the consulting firms got in trouble with back in the global financial crisis is they love to size a market. They love to talk about an opportunity. You know, I often joke when I see consulting firms say China has 1.4 billion people. What an opportunity. And I'm just thinking like, okay, well, the most important things beyond looking at the potential pot or the wallet is
Right.
what you realistically can attack, what is addressable to you. And that fundamentally revolves around your core competencies. If you're trying to do things that step way outside of that, or it's not a natural next adjacency of it, then you're just really going to set yourself up for failure. And that's why a lot of banks, when they say, oh, look at how much money certain banks are making in the collateralized debt obligation space and whatever, you can size this market and create excitement as much as you want.
Yeah.
But unless you're actually advising clients on, is this actually suitable for you? And are you going to manage the risk associated with this? Then they're diving into things fairly blind. So we spend a hell of a lot of time really looking at custom fitting a strategy for the particular circumstances of the companies that we work with. And unless you do that, your advice is generic hogwash, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's true. I've got a question from the group right now. Someone's asking, is the low cost of labor outsourcing model a thing of the past?
Mm.
Should entrepreneurs invest in tech rather than human capital in the next 12 months?
Well, again, I think it depends on
Yes.
what, right? I think you can continue to outsource the, like developers, right? A lot of development in the industry and tech development is outsourced. India is a massive epicenter of that development, right? And I guess there will be, I think the challenge around the outsourcing, you're looking at outsourcing versus potentially offshoring, right? I think many people are reconsidering their supply chains and risks right now. And even if you have an outsourced center, maybe a data center, you still need some people there sometimes to actually do things on site, right? Will this fundamentally change the way that we operate? Maybe a little bit. And I think there are some things that will be brought internally. And I do think technology means a lot of that outsourced low value add stuff is actually automated and streamlined and then put into a tech format. But there will still be something that evolves around that, an outsourced vendor manager, right? There's always going to be a business model. The world is so creative and adaptive, right?
Absolutely.
Do not underestimate the resilience of the human brain to think on our feet and say, well, how do I create a business for the business that just replaced my business, right? It's what I call creative destruction. It encourages people, and it's Joseph Schumpeter's thing. That's why I believe in it. And that's why I hate things like, oh, what's going on with quantitative easing, just throwing money at companies that I think would otherwise go under. And yes, you're going to end up with a little bit of pain for certain institutions. And I don't think you should go down the path of mass unemployment or whatnot. But there is a benefit to the world working out where the garbage is and just getting rid of that, right? And working out how to focus on higher value add industries as opposed to subsidizing and supporting businesses that at the end of the day do not add value, right?
Yeah.
It's a creative process, create and destroy. And, you know,
Absolutely.
I go through that all the time.
I think what we need to understand is to strike that balance between technology, offshoring, and human capital. I think we can't just have a sweeping strategy around just technology because, like you said, we can't do much without a human brain.
Mhm.
And I think it's this time, especially this COVID, is helping people to take a step back, retreat from their busyness,
Mhm.
really reinvent themselves as well as their businesses. And I think
Completely agree.
if you look at it from a different perspective, it's actually really healthy because I think we, as a world, globally, we do need that to
Mhm.
reinvent ourselves. Bring balance to the economy, bringing balance to the financial systems, and also bringing balance to our lives
I
personally.
agree. I agree. And I mean, technology, if you're driving more efficiency through tech, a lot of it is like use tech to free up your life to then engage with people, right? That's the whole cycle around it. Why do you want to immerse yourself in all of this? And like most people, I'm sick of Zoom. I mean, I love this session, right? But I'm so
Very
sick of,
diplomatic. Yeah.
yeah, I'm so sick of it. I haven't stopped from 8 a.m. this morning until now, back to back, and every call is running over a few minutes, and it's tiring. And I think that people crave that contact. It's just like when the restrictions are lifted. Look at Hong Kong. It's this cesspool of humans just going out saying, people, people, people. I want contact with human beings.
Yeah.
So yeah, technology is there. It's an enabler, right? It enables us to do things better and more effectively, but it should be there to facilitate our core interactions and where we want to build our value and skill set. The tech itself is not the real solution at the end of the day. It's solving a human need and a human problem, right? So we can't forget that.
On a lighter note, I noticed that you're a well-accomplished comedian as well. So can you now? Comedy is actually a superpower. Humor is very, very important, and
Mm,
sometimes underestimate the power of humor. And
mm.
doing talks internationally and meeting people everywhere, I can see that humor it's a leadership quality. So I just want to hear from you. How did that evolve for you, and how have you made it like a side career? I think it's pretty interesting. I hardly have guests who are in a hardcore financial services, but also accomplished comedians. So let's hear from you for that.
Well, I could say I work in two careers that are a joke, right? But I think if I want to look at this objectively, so what I had a sabbatical, and it's a story that I've told quite a few people, but I had a sabbatical when I was 29, 30 years old, right? I was really burnt out, and there's no, I guess, weakness in admitting I was just so miserable and I had no life and I didn't enjoy what I was doing, right? I intellectually enjoyed it, but I think that the nature of the corporate machine managed to wear a guy like me out. And I work 20 hours a day, right? Every day. But it's for me now, right? So I enjoy it in a very different way. But when that burnt me out to the point that psychologically I was just at my low and I had to leave, the sabbatical wasn't almost a choice. It was something for me where I felt forced into it because I
Yeah.
couldn't operate. And I wasn't really myself for a while. Anyone that does know me, whether you're on this call or in real life, I'm a really sociable, outgoing person, and I tend to keep things very light and fun, and I try and create that environment all the time. But I generally found that I just became the shell of myself. And then I was thinking, what do I want to do? And then Russell Peters, I used to see his videos talking about his dad, and I found it hilarious. And I thought my mom actually could be funnier than your dad. And then I signed up to an open mic night, and then I started sharing some stories about my Chinese mother, who was a godsend for comedy. She's fantastic. And overall, that was the catapult in starting my first comedy appearances, and then after that it kind of progressed from there. But for me, it's an amazing thing, right? It's such a rewarding thing, like to be able to make people laugh and cheer them up and watch their faces. Like it, I can't explain that feeling. It's just like when you tell a good joke around your friends and you see them in tears or cracking up. That's such a really good buzz. When you do that on a large scale with like an auditorium of 2,000 people, I've done that stuff before. That's an out of this world experience, right?
I'm sure.
So I genuinely love it. And your point around what it does for comedy is, I mean, what it does for the corporate life or as a superpower, I agree. Comedy teaches you so much. And I've never been shy. Growing up, I was always very outspoken and extrovert. And then always a performer, always doing public performances. And if there was a spotlight, it was me, 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 right? But I never did comedy. And then the first time I went up on a comedy stage, I was crapping myself because I thought, wow, actually, I'm going to get instantly judged, right? And I can hear that judgment straight away. And I can hear if I'm good or terrible, or I don't know how to react. That gives me the energy or it takes it away.
Yeah.
But what it's taught me is, how do you manage a room? How do you read people? How do you get people on side? In comedy, you can get people off side. How do you bring them back on side? How do you relate to people on a level that makes them feel intelligent? Good comedy is you make others feel intelligent, where people go, I get it, right? I get it. I get it. I hear it. It's the same thing in consulting. You sit down and you talk about something where a client goes, I get it, right? As long as you can go through that process, and the social aspect of it as well, around diffusing tension, building rapport, building trust as well, really, really important. And I think the final thing is, my clients generally understand that I'm pretty easygoing to work with, right? I have very high expectations about the work that we produce, and I don't clown around with the actual work, but
Yeah.
it's fun. And I see Val with a Yoda doll up to the screen. Very good, Val.
I saw uh, a research some time ago where they said that people who you compete on deals and negotiations, the ones that are more lighthearted usually get the deal. It's not saying that they're not competent, or the thing is that, you know, once you connect, it's the chemistry you build through humor is very, very powerful. And I've seen it in my career myself. So,
Agree. I've never seen anyone leave a business meeting,
hmm,
laugh because someone was funny, and say, oh, I don't like that person, right? It's not a usual, typical thing. If you can make someone laugh, you've developed a connection with them where you relate on an entirely different level. And
exactly.
humor is the best way to relate with people. Laughing about topics that you find mutually funny,
Yeah.
and sharing that experience is fantastic. So I found it a real blessing. And I actually got a lot of business from comedy, which is strange. But I've also brought a lot of my clients to my comedy shows, and, they never become clients again, but, but it's a fun process. And I don't separate those two parts of my persona. I think, if you don't want to work with me because my other job is trying to make people laugh, then rest assured, I probably don't want to work with you, right?
Absolutely, because you can't be two different people at two different places. You have to be
No.
the same person wherever you are. That's authenticity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one question I've got from Manisha, she's asking, you talked about the automation of several middle office and back office roles, but in the short term, how feasible do you think it is for big banks to actually implement it, given the complicated systems and complex regulatory requirements?
Sure. I actually think it's a great question, and I talk about this all the time. And everyone knows, apart from a few big success stories, that banks and financial institutions, especially the large ones, are terrible at innovating. And to Manisha, to your point, yes, there's legacy infrastructure. Yes, there's regulations. There's a lot of things that you can talk about. We actually just wrote a report around this. Why does digital innovation fail at these institutions? But the core, the root cause is culture. I can guarantee you it's
Always.
culture and mindset. There's no question about it. I've been in these organizations. I've seen people protecting their turf. I know people are very reluctant to change. It's natural. People don't want to change, right? Like, why do you think people divorce or get in arguments or split up as a couple? Because someone says, I want you to do something different. And, we've got our guard up, and no, I'm used to this. I'm comfortable with this. I don't want to expose myself. The incentive structure at a bank doesn't encourage the healthiness around that change process. Hit your next quarterly target. Well, but the digital change will take 12, 18 months. Hit your next quarterly target. Do what you need to do, right? So there's a lot of things that don't facilitate the process, and it creates the wrong kind of culture and mindset. And culture is all, at the end of the day, if you want to change behavior, it's ownership and accountability, right? You create an ownership mindset with people that want to do things because it's the right thing to do. And I don't think the altruism shines through to great degrees in an institution like a bank, right? And then the accountability is the stick end. Well, what am I on the hook for, right? And what ultimately am I responsible for reporting to? And unless that's under your remit, because banks are so complex, then you know what? Maybe this isn't for me, and maybe I'll focus on something else. That's the core issue. Please read our report called Beyond the Buzz. It will tell you everything on my company's website. You can download it. But that will really outline why digital innovation just fails for the large incumbent financial institutions.
Very good.
And that's speaking from direct experience. And we don't euphemize a single word in there.
Right, there's another one that I've received from Cherry. She's asking, what is your view on the virtual banks in Hong Kong? It seems a lot of talent a lot of talents are interested in working in this new industry? Will it be successful in the coming years comparing to the traditional banks?
Okay, so the VBs, it's an interesting story, but I think, you know, as if you're a brick and mortar bank and
Yeah.
that's how you're enabled and you don't have a good digital proposition and or experience, then people are going to move and migrate away from that. Not necessarily because they just want to. Remember, banking is very sticky, right? I've had the same bank forever. No matter how angry I am at them, I still stay with them, right? We tend to do it. It's not like setting up new bank accounts is just so straightforward, and we're creatures of habit, right? But I think if you obviously see the VBs doing something so fundamentally different to the incumbents, then you will see that competition coming in. The question is, at what cost, right?
Yeah.
You can always compete. You can always, I think many of you may have seen some deals from the virtual banks around your deposit interest rates. They're much, much higher than you would get anywhere else. Sounds good, right? But how long can you sustain a funding cost that's well above the funding? You're basically paying for customer acquisition, right? So all of this at the end of the day, as you scale your business, you need to think through, well, how do we solve for profitability? Right now, the VBs are solving for customers. Right now, the VBs are solving for the experience. At the end of it, how do you solve for profitability and market share? Now, you've got 8 virtual banks, and you've got a hell of a lot of incumbent banks here.
Yeah.
I can tell you in a few years from now, the landscape is not going to be the same. So the winners are going to have the right strategy in place, hopefully the one by Quinlan and Associates. But I think outside of that, you're going to have to be realistic. In all of these kinds of tech upswings, you see a boom, you see a euphoria, and then you see a consolidation, right? You see companies working out who the winners and losers are. And you can't have 8 direct winners in virtual banking in Hong Kong with the incumbents here with a population of 7.4 million people. I think that's a very hard ask.
Yeah. But I also think that, it's relatively cheaper and more reasonable from a cost perspective as well for the clients as well. So FinTech, I think, has a big advantage over traditional banks from a basic just a cost perspective, the fees,
For sure.
so once I think the model gets really socialized and there's a level of, regulatory backing against it, full support, I think it's a model that could definitely do wonders going forward.
For
I'm a
sure.
big believer in it. So
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% behind it. I would have never stepped into the role at FinTech Association if I wasn't going to advocate for the future of this business. But again, it's going to go through a period of flux. I think the macro industry dynamics are supportive and lend support to the overall proposition of moving digital. And FinTech, regardless of what industry you're in, people still need to pay for things, transact, doesn't matter. So FinTech forms a core component of almost every single business as they move digital. But yeah, the landscape will evolve. It will change. And that cost side of things, as you bring the cost down, it's like I always talk about B2Cs. I would ask everyone on here, how many people pay for apps? I can almost assure you no one pays for apps, right? Even if it's 99 cents, I'm not going to press click and then provide my credit card details. There is a real resistance in the human mindset now, given that content has become ubiquitous, and what I would call is 80-20 solutions, or something that's almost as good you can get for free, right?
Yeah.
Unless there's something fundamentally unique about content, like a Netflix, right? So create unique content. But those models are coming under a bit of pressure. And you see, for example, the WeWorks of this world, right? Building on top line, but never solve for profitability. So you can scale as much on the top line as possible, and you hope that you reach that point where that marginal return crosses, the marginal revenue crosses that marginal cost, and you start to move into profitability. But unless you've got those fundamentals sorted from the start, then solving for that later and getting your customers to pay later is a tricky and challenging proposition, because you tend to lose a lot of your customers as you move to things like a subscription model. Yeah. And the other side of it is, okay, we don't charge them, we charge external people to advertise. Well, great for the user experience, but I can tell you I'm getting sick of the pop-up ads in my YouTube, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
These are the business models that are evolving. How they pan out and who will win, we are yet to see. But it's interesting to see the directions that these tech and fintech companies are taking.
Where do you see Hong Kong in terms of fintech advancement when it comes to Singapore or UK or the United States? We are at par, or we think we're catching up? Where do you think we are?
I think Hong Kong is well positioned. Overall, the government support has been good. So the overall climate for that has been great. Of course, there's always more that can be done, and that's part of the process that every economy and country would need to look at, right? How can we drive this ecosystem forward? Hong Kong is naturally the financial services hub in the region. And to be honest, I still don't think that will change for any reason. Like, I know there's a lot going on and we don't need to go into that, but I still think it is fundamentally going to be the key financial services hub in the region for years to come, right? It's very hard to throw it off its perch. The question is, I guess, what needs to be done to drive Hong Kong even further? How does it become even more special? The challenge for many fintechs here is, if you look at, let's say, a global bank, most of the decision-making power is in New York, London, Zurich, or Paris. It's in the global HQ.
Yeah.
In Asia, from a power base, they do have, a governance structure and operating model. I think, like, for example, Credit Suisse is the only business that split out the Asia Pacific business as a separate P&L business. Right. But everything else, it's operated off product lines, right? Product dominates geography in financial services. So as a result of that, the decisions being made, especially around the adoption of these fintech solutions, are very much offshore. And the fintechs here, I would say, to be even more successful, is think about their propositions as global propositions. You can have your regional angle to it, but always see your competitors as global, not just what's going on here. Because I can assure you, you might be chatting to a bank about a particular solution you have that can roll out in Hong Kong, but there's another competitor in New York doing the same thing with the big boss. And if that one flies and it can be customized to Hong Kong, that's the solution that's going to win. So think about your competitive space much, much larger. So, yeah.
So there's a question that's come in saying that I work for a bank in a non-technology driven role. If I want to move to fintech, how do I approach it?
Okay, well, fintech, remember, fintech is a really big term, right? There's so many aspects to fintech. You can, you want to move into blockchain, you want to do AI, you want to do, like, again, I can run through the whole fintech taxonomy and it would take me about, 20 minutes to go through all the verticals and horizontals of what is fintech. But the question would be asking yourself, what is it that my skill set and interests are, right? And what is transferable into the fintech space? That's the most critical question if you're trying to do a lateral career move, because you have to establish your value proposition to the companies and ultimately what piques your interest. So I don't know what role you're in, but I would say a natural area to really extend yourself is going and learning about certain parts of the ecosystem and working out, perhaps you're a relationship manager, how to leverage your contacts and relationships in banking to open the doors for technology solutions, right?
Getting more relevant to the industry as well.
Yeah, yeah. And again, fintech doesn't mean you need to be a developer. Of course not. There's many things you can do in fintech. Fintechs are just run like a normal organization, hopefully a bit leaner, right? But at the end of the day, they're there to sell their business just like the traditional one, just a little bit more tech savvy, right?
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, fantastic. So, I noticed that you also assist as a professor in certain respects. Like how do you see the youth in Hong Kong, the graduates and the younger generation just coming out into the market? What advice would you have for them? What do you see are opportunities for them in this space or any other space as well?
Yeah, okay. Oh, the Asia story is really interesting because I think there's always going to be fantastic new grads coming out. And I do get the opportunity to meet a lot and have the fortune of being able to hire some of them as well, whether they be interns or full-time staff. Mm. My view on this is, I think for a large part, many aspects of the education system are not delivering what the companies need, right? And it's all well and good that you've read history or you're a great mathematician, or you have a master's degree in this and that. But a lot of the areas I would focus on, if you really want to get a job and you really want to be successful, is your EQ, right? It's really about your EQ at the end of the day, and your attitude and the way that you approach learning. Be hungry and hungry to learn, and show you're willing to put things in before you ask for things out of it, right? Ultimately, a lot of these businesses, especially if you're interested in going in the startup world, just give me something straight away. The person's a startup, right? Unless they're a billionaire backer, it's very hard for them to justify. So, you go on these long-term missions with people that have big visions to conquer the world or do something different, right? Like the crazy guy like me, right? This isn't an indication to people to say I won't pay them if I hire them. That's not it. But what I am trying to say is, if you're on a journey to do something bigger and better and fundamentally changing, there are risks associated with that. And risk and reward it's backdated, right? This is back end risk and reward. This isn't upfront. So you have to map that risk reward profile very carefully in terms of how you want to do it. Ultimately, surround yourself with people that drive you, that motivate you, that emulate the qualities that you would like to see. Like, look at what defines success, right? Your title of this session is called The Road to Success. And I think too many people define success very myopically around the context of money.
Right.
I promise you, I used to work with all the wealthy bankers and financiers in the world, and I would say the proportion that were happy was really low. It's just miserable beyond comprehension. And
I see it every day, so I agree with you.
Every day. And just the misery is this internal battle that many of them go through around feeling like they're not fundamentally doing the things that they want to do, or just taking a paycheck to compensate for things that ultimately don't drive them or motivate them. Right. That doesn't mean in life everything is going to be a rosy walk, or you don't need to go through some hard things. It's good to develop thick skin, and you should learn to, right? But put yourself out there as a young generation. Put yourself out there. Put yourself in front of people that are going to make a difference, and show your value. Do not message me like I get on LinkedIn saying, Ben, can I have a job? I mean, I see that stuff, right? And I see the message written like that. And I just think, I don't know what happened to etiquette or protocol, even a thought process to say, why would I, as someone that doesn't know you, respond in any way favorably to something like this? But I'll tell you who grabs my attention. The one that reaches out saying, seen what you've done, love this, is specific around the things that they have focused on, and comes to me with the value they can add to me as the first thing. What can I do to help you? As opposed to, what can you do for me? That's Correct. Why people forget that direct sales on LinkedIn, this is what I can do. Do you want to set up a quick call, right? Just easy with it, right? A lot of people need to think long and hard about how they build relationships and nurture them. So focus on the people aspect, even in a business like tech. Do not lose sight of that.
That's true. I think the fulfillment factor is a very big thing now. I mean, if you're because you're spending 9-10 hours of the day at your job, and if you're not fulfilled, that's not a very good place to be. So I think we need to relook at those things. And COVID is giving us a pretty good opportunity to do that, to retreat from our lives and businesses and actually rethink that strategy for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, there is an attitude of, you have a job, be grateful. Half of my brain kind of agrees with that. The other half goes, well, you can always make things better. You don't have to be grateful if you work with a terrible boss, or if the culture sucks in your company. Don't suck terrible things up. It's not like that. But remember, the thing is, focus on the things that you can control, right? So many people spend way too much time just worrying and fixating on things they have no control over. And that makes you very miserable. If you apply just 50% of that time to doing something, like even micro goals, like that first drive in your brain to get you to go forward and start putting things into action, is often the most difficult for people. But, when I was younger, I used to complain about things a lot. I did. And trust me, I have a good bitch every now and then, but it lasts for about 2 minutes maximum. And when I'm done, just move on with it, get on with it, and get on with your life. Because the more energy that you expend on things that ultimately you can't change, and the more negativity you bring to yourself around it, which I see people doing all the time, especially young people, focus on the things that you can do. And the one thing that you have full power to control is yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With that, thank you very much, Ben. Any last words from you?
No, I would just say, to everyone here, be safe and be happy. I mean, the world is changing and nothing's perfect. And I think the important thing in this current environment is no one's alone, right? We're all going through exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So surround yourself with people that can ultimately give you the advice, act as a good mental sparring partner, or even just keep you company for a pizza and a beer, right?
Or a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Don't lose sight of those things. It's really, really important to keep that in mind and in perspective around the way you go about what you need to do. And don't stress too much. Like, there's so much unknown in the future. So all you can do is tool and upskill yourself for an environment that none of us know how it will eventuate. And I'm in exactly the same boat. But you can see during this time, I'm definitely not using this as an excuse to look at a down period. I'm putting my hand up at everything that I can. I'm putting my foot forward at every opportunity, because that's how you create luck. So many people talk about luck, and I'm not lucky. I sit at home and no luck happens. Luck is not rainfall. Luck is not the wind. Luck is you, right? The person who's lucky in buying a lottery ticket and won, I'll tell you what they did. They bought the lottery ticket, right? So people always forget that. Oh, how did they win? They went and got off their ass and bought the ticket, right? Just like the person that got the job applied for the job. The person that ultimately has accelerated in their career, pushed for it and worked for it. So nothing comes easy in life. It's not an easy journey, but that's the fun. Embrace the turd littered journey. You learn so much, right? And you get to talk about it in fun stories. I get to do it as a comic, right? And that's what makes life interesting. And it's what makes the good times that much sweeter and more memorable, I would say.
So when preparation meets timing, it's what we call luck. And I think that's quite important.
That's right. That's right.
So if people want to reach out to you, where can you be found? Like, do you have a website or somewhere where they could reach out to you?
You could troll me on LinkedIn. That's all right. You can add me on that. Feel free. I have a Facebook account. I post some silly comedy stuff there every now and then, and Instagram. So my LinkedIn is Benjamin Quinlan. My Facebook is Benjamin Quinlan. And my Instagram is BB Quinlan. Trust me, you'll delete me after probably 5 days. It'll frustrate you. But if any of you do want to keep in touch and find out what I'm doing and maybe hopefully learn a thing or two, share experiences with me, always open to that. Yeah.
Excellent. Really, really enjoyed our conversation, Ben. And thank you for being on our show. I'm sure people took away a lot of insight. And maybe next session will be about comedy.
I would enjoy that. I actually did get asked by, so I did get called up by a big corporate saying, Benjamin, can we book you for a comedy show? And I said, great. And they said, on Zoom. And I'm just imagining me here now telling jokes and then leaning into the Zoom and saying, does everyone mind unmuting your mics? And then seeing that everyone's mics are already unmuted. And just realizing how bad that experience is for me. But yeah, hopefully we can do something more amusing and fun next time. And I'm looking forward to the stage opening up again.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you everyone for joining Road to Success Masterclass. I hope this was useful for you. Till next time, thank you very much and keep safe.
Danny, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.